Hi, good afternoon, Anand.
Hi, Sunil. How are you doing?
Thank you for being with us this afternoon to take the Q&A. I think that was a scintillating talk and also inspiring once again in the series of leaders that have spoken today about India. And we definitely are very, I would say, happy to hear what Sanjay had to say in terms of the opportunities for India itself and the fact that he's talking about pushing technologies through multiple barriers. So we have a few questions which the audience is asking based on what Sanjay has just said. The first one is specifically around Micron, because Sanjay talked about how Micron itself is working with the Indian ecosystem in terms of both memory and storage, but also to further applications on the edge. So the question specifically from the audience is, what are the initiatives Micron is looking at in India to enhance local applications and with Micron storage and memory solutions, like in, for example, the next generation cloud, etc.?
I think it's a good question, Sunil. There are broadly two levels of intersection we have with the broader ecosystem. The first level of intersection is with the colleges, centers of research that we have in the country, where a lot of the early pilot on new technologies is happening. So we have a structured program called URAM, which is University Research Alliance of Micron. And through URAM, we work with the top 20 colleges in the country, where we collaborate on research, problem statements in cloud, computing, edge, automotive. In fact, the one that I want to highlight was this work we did with IIT Delhi, where during the COVID pandemic, we worked with IIT Delhi to see if we could have a simple AI algorithm that can scan simple chest X-rays much faster to have a quality deduction on COVID. Right? It's a very simple, useful, relevant example of collaboration. So that's one level. The other level of collaboration is obviously with our potential customers, all the key customers that are innovating in the digital, financial, social, and other spheres. We either work with them as a direct customer-vendor relationship, or we have more of a proof of concept relationship. This could be in the space of EV, it could be in the space of cloud computing, it could be with centers of research. So we have a multi-pronged approach, and glad to see that in less than 3 years of our existence, we have managed to build those strong bridges in a comprehensive way.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. Now, again, continue on that specific answer that you give. What do you think is the role of the academia itself in pushing the barriers of technology, innovating, especially for applications on the social side? I think Mr. Mehrotra gave multiple examples of where applications have been helpful, for example, the water situation. So are there other areas that Micron is currently working on, both from an innovation aspect as well as connect with the social part? And my question primarily is, how does the academia part play a role? I know you talked about URAM, but just to give a general perspective on what are some of the things that industry can do with academia to push this to the next level?
Yeah, and Sunil, when we started engaging with academia, like with any engagement, identifying the right problem statement is so critical, right? There are so many problems to go solve, and you have to pick one where the natural synergy between the party like Micron and the institute is very obvious, right? Now, globally, healthcare plays a big role for Micron, and in a country like India, where we've been talking about telemedicine for such a long time, being able to provide remote support for health services through a very strong cloud edge ecosystem is critical, and we all talk about it. So that's one area where we believe we've identified a couple of partners that we will work with closely. That is very close to our heart. STEM education is, like for most technology companies, an area of very close to Micron's heart and very active theme for us at Micron India. But that said, we also understand that every university may have its own kind of, I would say, attractive theme that they are working on. So the trick here is to make sure that we combine our strengths, not impose our global mandates, but combine our strengths well and drive outcomes. So healthcare, STEM, and in some case, I would say social entrepreneurship are things that we are doing quite actively in the country right now.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. So since your last word was social entrepreneurship, what are some of the initiatives Micron is taking in India which will help the startup ecosystem, because obviously Micron is a leader in storage space, and most applications today require data. So what are some things that Micron is doing in India for working with the startup ecosystem? Any examples?
Yeah, understood. So, to be honest, again, two very practical areas of intersection. We have a lot of fabulous IP companies that I think the number of such companies is still very small. But we are hoping that would be a very direct way of incubating, activating some of these possible future engagements. That's one theme that we work on. Whenever we find a startup that has critical or interesting technologies in the digital mixed signal or memory space, we start encouraging and working with them. That's one space that we work with. The second one we find is memory research is still very niche. We don't find a lot of colleges doing memory research or something very close to our heart. So we are very selective there. But having said that, we are finding with IIT Madras, IIT Delhi, and a few other colleges, a lot of center of excellence are being planned. We're also thinking of something with IIIT Hyderabad, for example. So those are things I look forward to in the next couple of years.
Yeah, sure. I think even from an IESA perspective, the focus on design is key right now. The focus is on design-led innovation, and that's perhaps the catchphrase. Let me take another question from the audience. This question is again technology related. Micron is looking at in-memory compute for AI/ML applications. Are there any examples of this? That's the question from the audience.
Yeah, I think we've talked about in-memory computing for a long time, because if you look at the broad, if you look at the typical compute infrastructure, most of the challenges is between the handshake that happens between the processing and the memory, right? And so the obvious way is to look at how can we compute much closer to the memory, either inside the memory or very next to the memory. So that's been something which is, we are, as I said, even at Micron India, we're doing a lot of research in what we call advanced memory and in-memory computing approaches. Of course, I can't talk about our specific approach. There are so many ways of getting there, but clearly we're still many years away from realizing some of those advantages. But it's a big focus area, because a lot of the energy, a lot of the time, decision time is spent in the data transfer between the compute and the memory parts of the ecosystem. So big area of focus for us. Yes.
Thank you. And just one last question for you. You're in a vantage point, being in the memory and storage space. You pretty much intersect with most of the silicon guys, especially when it comes to systems level integration of any products that come out. What, in your view, from your point of view, would you suggest that India should do to reach that goal of accelerating its ESDM growth over the decade? What are some of the key things from your perspective? Because you have a view across the industry, since memory and storage are pretty much ubiquitous, everybody needs them, and you have a very special, let's say, perspective. So, in your opinion, what should we be looking at to get that accelerated growth? What kind of collaboration should we be working within the industry?
A good question, Sunil. I think Sanjay talked about COVID telling us that we need to collaborate. So clearly, any design development center cannot coexist by itself. It has to go and work with multiple sites to get something going. But that said, one thing that we are focusing on at Micron India, I'm sure it's being done at many other peer companies, is to see for a couple of platforms and products, we have significant co-location and vertical integration happening, right? And the advantage of vertical integration is it is much more efficient, because from a time zone, collaboration, friction element standpoint, it's much easier to go and design something completely out of the country. So as a large development center, we will have multiple objectives. One objective is to go and help and support our product lines wherever possible. There will be another team around building end-to-end products. I think that's helpful, because when you have that kind of end-to-end expertise, the next logical steps in terms of testing, probing, and even manufacturing become much more logical. We talk about manufacturing quite a bit, and I know it's a sore point. At some point of time, I believe when we have the end-to-end competency, manufacturing would be the next logical step. So a lot, even within at Micron India, there are a couple of product lines where, starting from the controller to the firmware to the memory to the test, the probe, the final QRA is being done out of India. So I think by doing more and more of those activities, we get closer to what I define as the final frontier of local manufacturing, which I believe will start with assembly and test, and hopefully eventually someday will move into full-scale manufacturing. But the only thing I say in a slightly lighter vein is don't get obsessed with the new shining toy out there. There is so much to be still achieved in the R&D and design and execution phase. We still have to improve our innovation metrics. There's a lot more that we can do between all of us at India, and that should be our primary focus. And because it employs highly talented, skilled, high-paying engineers, which is good for the economy. Instead of always rushing after the next frontier, because the next frontier should be a logical evolution of what we do today, and we need to focus on that too.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for your input. Especially just summarizing the last point that you made. I think there is a need for focus when you talk about vertical integration rather than trying to go after multiple things. Maybe have small successes, especially with the ecosystem collaborating around creating products with, like you said, vertically focused. I think there is an opportunity for us to evolve organically and then maybe look at some sort of transformation for a much wider impact. So thank you so much, Anand. I think both Sanjay's talk and your answers to many of the questions, there are many more actually, and I'm sure we can share them with you offline. Really appreciate your time and your perspectives. Thank you very much for sparing your time, and thank you for facilitating Mr. Mehrotra's talk. Thank you very much to the Micron team in India, and we really enjoyed the talk and the Q&A.
Thank you, Sunil. Good luck with the show.